reason. So why did you give me the wrong number? It will tell you the reason. Why that reason? It will tell you the root cause. Why that root cause? Then from there you'll have found out what the problem was and try to fix it, right? Now in this case, it's an email you're writing to a client or a customer or your colleague or your boss, for example. Then it comes that they do something that you did not, or rather whatever task that you are giving out was not followed to the correct format, or the correct process was not followed. Now, in this case, if you are a person who would say they misunderstood me, and I think this you've heard even in our political space, that people say I was misquoted, right? When you say I was misquoted, that means you're running away from the. So in this case, you'd say my email was unclear. And now, since it was unclear, this is the fix that I want to do, all right? Yeah, this is the fix that I want to do, all right? So that would say you are owning up to the mistake, but then trying to look for a fix, yeah? You're trying to look for a fix. This is the problem. This is what I want to do. But not looking at, you're putting the blame on someone that you had, emailed to, or they misunderstood me. But you know what is written. Most of us, when we receive emails, what goes on into our mind first, you try to read that email in the perspective of the person who is writing to you. So you try to see what are they trying to mean in this case. So most of the time, if it's somebody you know and it's somebody you interacted with, there is a voice, maybe their voice trying to run into your mind when you're reading that email from them, right? Another one would be now, and this is a famous one. This was not my job. I know many of us are, by thumbs up, maybe I want to get a feel of the room. If you have ever said this is not my job, yeah? Thumbs up, if for any, and you are being honest here, nobody will judge you. Thank you very much. If you have ever, this is a famous one, this is not my job, so you will not do it, yeah? Or you are in a team, you are working in a team, but at the same time, something bad or happened, and most of the time this comes out when, again, there is pressure or some mistake has happened, right? So you say, no, that was not my job, yeah? But this is the case. If you are being accountable, you will say, I saw it, but I didn't say anything, right? You are being honest. Niliona, but sikufanya kitu, or it was not in my place to do it. Probably for fear of repercussions. Most of these things happen because of that, for fear of retaliation, or for fear of, some form of maybe disciplinary action being taken against you. So the first things will be, this was not my job, or rather it was not in my place to answer. If it's an email or if it's a task to do, it was not in my job description, right? I see, especially these days, we have Gen Zs that they use that a lot. When you give them a JD, they stick to it. So that any other duty, they will not go for it and say that is not part of my job description. Yeah? So they will not do it. So now, what are we trying to build here? What is the reflect action that we are trying to build here? When something goes wrong, your first sentence should be, how do we, or what happened, and how do we fix? If you find yourself, you are naming a person, or you are naming another team, or you are naming another department, that's a gray area and becomes now a work ethic. Then you ask yourself, if I was the person, what would the person with integrity do? Am I trying to be accountable? And if I am, what is the next course of action? So in this case, now you rewrite your statement and saying, or if you are in a team, you will say, I saw the mistake. Maybe you are not in a position to work, but to resolve. But now, what are you trying to do afterwards? Yeah. So it will not be as a task per se, but it will be now you are trying to shift your mentality into being accountable rather than dismissing. So you don't want to blame a team, you do not want to blame a person. Yes, as the famous saying goes, makosa ishafanyika. What is the next course of action? So you don't say, this was not me, or it was him, or it was her, or it was them, but not me. So you are trying to remove yourself from the picture. But now remember, if you are in an organization, yeah, the fall and rise of that, or rather the success and failures of that department, you are included. The success and failures of that company, you are included, right? If you think about it that way, then accountability becomes a reflex that you will not think twice to being accountable to whatever it is that you are mandated to. All right? The next pillar we are looking at here now is, before we go into that, now the reflex, as I said, the reflex action now will be you are acknowledging the mistake. And if you see them early, because as I said, these are nuances that happen in our daily interactions before they become big. They are small talks that we do here and there in the office. They call it mchongo, I know we do it in the office, and some of these things escalate, right? So before they do, acknowledge them. Focus on solution, but not who caused it, and not giving an excuse. As I said, do not name a person or a team, right? What is the solution? The mistake has happened. How do we move from here now? Now, keep your comments, or rather your commitments, visible and trackable. Ask, what was my role in this outcome? Yeah. And most of this happens because, and especially in organization where you find you are in a team, say for example, an accounting department, and then the reconciliation has happened, and then the money that you are reporting to the board, or rather to the management, the revenue you are reporting is not really correct. So you would say it is that person who was doing it, but you are forgetting that you are all as a team in the finance department. Yeah. So ask yourself, of course, there must have been a part that you played in whatever overall outcome that was, right? All right. Let's go to pillar number 3. That is transparency. At this point, I would like to ask ourselves, in the room, how many of us are transparent in the dealings that we do? First, professionally, and then in our own, personal spaces. Thumbs up if you are transparent. And as I say, let's be honest, because we can only learn something when you are honest. You just don't say, I am thank you, Mutua. Just don't say, I am transparent. And remember the integrity thing we started with, aligning what you do with your values and who you are, right? Thank you for those who have put their thumbs up. For the rest, I will not. But again, we are saying today we are not judging anyone, we are trying to learn. This is a reflex for our own self, or rather is a reflection to our own self. Think of the things that you've done throughout maybe the last 6 months. Have you been transparent in your reporting? Have you been transparent in your interaction with your colleagues in your team? Yeah. Have you been transparent? That is the question you ask yourself. Probably I may not get an honest answer in this case, but not to worry. At least we are learning something, right? Okay, so what is transparency? Transparency means that you are sharing information, or rather you are sharing what is important to people who need to make a decision, right? If you have information, for example, and you know that information in the near or in the past, that may be, it is a cause for you to speak it out. Even when things are not right, and I'm dwelling much on things not being right, because when we are comfortable, when things are rosy, everybody's happy, no one cares, right? But when things start going south, that's when true characters of people emerge. Yeah. So remember, transparency is not about being perfect. It's not about being, at the forefront of everything, but it's about being honest in what. If you have been given a task, are you going to cut corners so that either you finish early or you again try, said earlier, you are trying to give a report that will look nice to your boss, but in reality, the numbers are wrong. I remember there's somewhere I worked before where we were giving a report to a manager, and then the manager in this case would give a report to the board. But you would see down here, you are trying to report people, like for example, me, my background is in IT. And there was this case, one case that we needed to buy a new server for backup because our backups were failing. So we would say, this and this and this and this is needed. That is our report to our manager. And then when the manager goes to the board, then he says, okay, we are working on the on our servers, though some days there is not good, but we are trying to see how we can manage. Because again, when you go to your boss, you have to justify. If you, for example, if it's something to buy, in this case, we wanted to buy a new server, right? And this new server is costing around $500,000. So how are you going to justify this? You'd say, what if whatever is there is working? But you can see from our point of view, you can see there is some elements of warnings, and these warnings, they may be a warning today. They may be a warning today, but tomorrow it will not be a warning. It will be now a crash. And when a crash happens, you can all agree with me that you start looking at IT department saying, where were you? What did you do? Where is the backup? Yeah. And things like those, right? So he would give wrong information, and this went on for a while because as we were thinking, okay, they are thinking about it, they are not buying today, but of course we have given information. Now, one time backup did not happen, and then we were hacked. I don't want to go into a lot of stories about that, but you can imagine the pressure that was there. We lost almost 3 days of data, which was, again, had to be done manually to recover that. But now you can, now in crisis, that server was bought within a day it was bought. Where was this money now coming from? If you are told about there was no money, right? But you see, these were warning signs. We try to give the warning signs, but as I said, these are things that are the nuances. Today it will be a warning, tomorrow it will not. On your case, now, if you are trying to be transparent, means you are giving an honest opinion. And I'm inclined to say that most of organizations, they don't care much about warnings. They want crisis. I think there's a lot of memes that are in the social media where you say somebody saying, I don't want peace, I want problems. Yeah. So in Kenya, people work in crisis mode. You find out even these days, on June 30th, when people are filing their pay, or rather their returns, you find that there's a lot of queue. There's a big queue on that last day. Why? I don't know why people are waiting for that last day. And then if you're part of the quorum here who try to file the tax either on the second last or the last day, you'll find that the platform was very slow, yeah, because now everyone now is trying to, and then you become agitated because now things are not going through, and you're now realizing today is the last day. So why do we then have to work under pressure? Yeah, that's why there is a lot of, when you see and when you go to interview or when you see a job post somewhere, ACCUREX, they do post jobs. There is another line here, they say, if you can work under pressure with minimum supervision. Why do they do that? Yeah? And you can avoid this because even your own body, it communicates, I'm not well today. If you can feel it, I'm not well today. So what are you going to do about it? Do you go to the hospital? Do you take action on it? Or you wait until now you are not really, you can't wake up? That's when people come and say, let's take this guy to the hospital. Being transparent transparent. Now it starts with yourself. Are you honest with your own self? Are you honest at your workplace? Are you withholding information that will be important? Or rather, if we withhold this information, it may be detrimental to the organization. That's a question for reflection. Now, a scenario in practice here, you know that for those of us who are, again, trying to implement a new system, and you know the launch date is near, and there is a risk maybe two of the engineers are behind in their in their design or whatever that may be. Now your boss, in this case maybe vice president, asks, how are things going? Then you would respond and say, we are, it's a little bit tight, but we are on track. What does that mean? You have bought yourself some bit of time to figure out whatever the pressure it is that you're trying to work in the background. But one thing that you have removed here is, if he was, or rather your boss was in a place where he can be the answer to whatever obstacle that you're having, but you have removed that, so he will not be able to help you at this point. It makes now that issue to become an ethics issue, because you have not really been in whatever issue that you are facing. And if we withhold this information, and the person you are withholding this information from may be that person that really is able to help you. Yeah. So this is not a problem. It becomes an ethic problem because there is a bottleneck, or rather there is an issue, there is a risk of failure for that debt to launch your system or your implementation, just because you want to stay in quotes good in the eyes of your boss. So a more honest answer in this case would be something like, we are at risk of missing this launch date, right? But here is what I'm doing to mitigate this risk. For people who have done project management, you will know those things that you need to do so that you can launch, or rather your milestone can be achieved. You say, this is what I'm doing to mitigate this issue. You say, I'm doing A, I'm doing B, I'm doing this C. But I will need your help on task B or on issue or on issue X. This is where I need help. Now, you have preempted the risk to your vice president or to your boss. You have preempted the risk. Psychologically, they will start preparing themselves. If they cannot help them, they will start preparing themselves for that eventuality. So when it happens, they will know beforehand, okay, I was told about this. Yeah. So you have now created a space, a psychological space, where now your boss and yourself and your team would be in a position at least to discuss and then come up with a solution. So the key behavior in practice here is now be honest. Speak up early. When you see there is an issue, be transparent enough to say it. Flag those risks, flag those uncertainties, flag those obstacles before they become big, because then at least within your team, you can find a solution, right? Any question up to that point? Are we together? Thumbs up if you are still together, you can still hear me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Hudson. All right. Let's go to pillar number 4. Pillar number 4 says, thank you. Thank you all. Good to know that we are together. Pillar number 4 speaks of respect. And what is respect? I always say respect is, first of all, treating a person, first of all, before they are an engineer, or before they are Wilfred, like me, before they are George, before they are Mercy, before they are Immaculate, they are a human being. So first and foremost, can you see this person as a human being? Yeah. Now it becomes a person, treat them regardless of whether they are your juniors or they are your seniors, especially in organizations. Now you will see, I've seen I've been, or rather I am in an organization where people, we have different departments and different people. Now we have people who, especially those people who make our offices clean, right? The janitors. Most people do not see those people as important. One day we came to an office, and then during the night, the toilets had blocked. There was no water during the evening, and someone had left the tap open. But those toilets, they don't have they call it the receptor, that small hole that is in the toilet where maybe water can pass through. They don't have that. So water came, it filled the sink, and then it started pouring. So when it started pouring, slowly by slowly, it began filling the office. So in the morning when we came, we find a lot of water in the office. And that morning, that's when that person who was taking care of that cleanliness in the office was on leave on that day. So all of the people in the office had to be all hands on deck to clean the office, because we cannot stay in water. That's when we found out that cleaning the office is not an easy. If you have ever cleaned even your house, you will know it's not an easy task, right? So, respecting that person whom you may see that they are doing work that may not be as engineers, or there's some people who like to call themselves our learned friends, right? If they are not your learned friends, that work is also important, right? So, respecting them despite of their rank, despite of their role, despite of their background, yeah. It is key. Do not take them just as a resource. So you will say, in this case, you will say, I respect this person because they are helping me with task A. But if they will not help you with task A, would you be able to respect them? Yeah. Publicly recognizing this junior staff, and especially, I put this as an example because most organizations, they look down on junior staff, and especially I've just given an example of those people who take care of cleanliness. I've seen when someone is cleaning, they are cleaning, but then someone comes from the outside and then they just pass. And when they are passing, their shoes they have dirt on it. Then you see the footprints. And then they are going just looking behind like this and seeing, oh, you have left a dirty footprint. But you don't sound even remorse. You can't even say sorry. Yeah. That's an work ethic issue. Are you seeing that your work is more important because either you came in late, so you want to go and start your work, and you are neglecting to see this person? You are neglecting to see their work. So respect, in this case, is very important for this, especially for this subordinate staff. Yeah. What is our practice in this case? The key behaviors in this case: speak to others with the same way that you wish them speaking to you. If, for example, I've also said in one of the training that we've done here, I've been able to work in an Indian organization. And I'm not saying all, but most of those that I've interacted with, they say they feel when they shout at you, that's when you can do their work, or that's when you respect them. Yeah. Now, in this case, flip the script for a bit and then ask yourself, we want to have a good work ethics here, and we want to respect others. So if I don't like being shouted at, why am I shouting at the other person, right? So in this case, ask yourself, would it be good to shout to this person if I don't like me myself being shouted at? So if that's the answer is a no, then it becomes a work ethic issue, then you don't do it, right? Of course, give credit where it's due. Yeah. If I'm the one giving you a report, then you are going to present that report to the board or to the management in this case. Are you going to give credit where it's due, or you are going to get there and then you do like thump yourself on the chest and say, I'm the one, I am the one? Yeah. That's why they say there's no I in a team, right? So would you say, I am the one who did that report when it's good? I am the one who did it. But when it's bad, you are the one who did it. It is so and so, right? Avoid gossip, and this a lot, because this one is this one is a gray area, right? I know gossip and politics, called politics. Politics in the office, we can't avoid that, right? But if you are speaking about, if whatever you are speaking, now in this case, it becomes a work ethic issue. If whatever it is that you are speaking of, if it's a person, would you say the same thing if that person you are speaking of is there? If the answer is no, don't speak about it. Would you say the same thing or rather the same information if maybe it is your whatever you are discussing was put maybe in a company's notice board or whatever it is? If you will not be comfortable, if whatever you are saying, you are telling the other person or whatever it is, the team that you are telling to, if you will not be comfortable doing that, then it becomes a work ethics. Don't do it, right? So avoid was ask yourself, would I say this thing in this tone, in this form, in this room, if talking about was standing behind me or standing in the room? So how you talk about someone who is not available or who is not in the room speaks a lot about respect. Do you give yourself credit or you give the team credit, whoever it is that you are working with in a team? Yeah. Most of us, when we have emails, when we write those emails, just when the email comes to us, it's a very angry email. You perceive it is a very angry email. It's the first thing you do is click reply all, and then you write whatever it is that you want to write. If that email is read to you in a calm manner, would you again repeat the same things you said? So reflect action in this case, have an inclusive learning and acknowledge if there is any contribution within the team, acknowledge this. Give credit where it's due. Use we instead of I. Yeah. Again, I reiterate again, do not just take the team member or rather the person that you are giving respect to just as a resource, or maybe you are giving them respect because they have your ticket to you progressing to another stage of progression or rather being promoted. That will not be the case. Thumbs up if you are still together. We are talking about the last pillar now. Thank you, Charles, Katulu, Freeman. Okay, good to know that we are still together. Okay, the last thing we are talking about before we go to the case study is fairness. What is fairness? Fairness means you are applying the same standard, you are applying the same rules, you are applying the same, if, for example, you are giving a work and there's a deadline, do not give preference to person X just because you know them. Yeah, regardless of role, regardless of rank, regardless of tribe, when you are giving standard, give to everybody. That is fairness. And you'll agree with me that most organizations, most commonly reported form of workplace misconduct is favoritism. Yeah. This one, as I'm saying, this one was done by ACI survey. It beats harassment, it beats dishonesty, and it beats safety violation by far. Favoritism. And you'll agree with me that how many of us, by thumbs up, how many of us in our own organization have seen things being done and you have seen favoritism play out? Thumbs up if you have. Pamphilia, I see. That one is common. Definitely you have felt someone is being favored than you. Okay, Oscar, I see that. Grace, thank you. How does this play out? You are working the same, you have the same JD. You are an accountant. The other guy is an accountant. Yeah. You find that they are being paid twice as you are, but not because probably they say some are paid because of experience. But in this case, you find that you both have, if it's 5 years experience, you both have 5 years experience. You are in the same job. Yeah. then you find that they are being paid twice, right? How affect you? How will that make you feel, right? So you find that there's a lot of favoritism. Okay, you go in a job interview, and you'll agree with me that most organizations, especially government organizations, you find that because there is, yes, when he says, blame this on organizational culture. Yeah. In a way, yes, but we are talking about workplace ethics, and workplace ethics also informs what culture will be in that organization. By extension, if it's a good culture, it needs to, it forms, or rather, it is made by this, most important, by these 5 pillars. Yeah. So I agree with you, organization, but who in this case is an organization? Is it just the only management? Yeah, really. It is not, right? Maybe if we were treating our colleagues better, if we were treating, or rather being fair, being respectful, being transparent, having integrity, all of us, if we play that part, definitely culture will improve. And if culture improves, that's when, if that's something like that happens, you'll find that maybe you can say it's a cultural culture. It's a cultural problem, right? Organizational culture problem, right? All right. Okay, my slide is common. Okay. Now, how do we address this? Because if you find there's a favoritism, you need to address it quickly and honest. Ask yourself again, if the roles were reversed, if you are the person who is giving favoritism, if the roles were reversed, would you agree with whatever outcome that would be? So fairness is not just treating everyone identical. Even in our own families, you may have uh, you have 6 siblings. No one, you may be the same, but no one is. You can't treat everyone uh, identical. Everyone has their own personalities. Yeah. So do not favor just because of either personality or this because this one is good or whatever. Hmm. Yes, I see when we said, I say ethics has a ripple effect. If the top does not practice it, the judge automatically act the same. Yes, definitely, that is very true, and we are going to see that maybe from when we are looking at the case scenarios. So in this case, what would be the fairness in practice? You ask yourself, am I applying this rule the same way to everyone? Or would I make this decision if maybe my manager was watching? Would I make the same decision? If it's a reward, am I rewarding results or am I rewarding relationship? How many of us here we have seen people being rewarded just because you saw maybe it's a boss's niece or they are related or maybe they go to the same country club or they go to the same church or they come from the same village. Thumbs up if you have. And maybe I'll get, yes, Oscar. Maybe you can give me a case scenario at this point. Anyone would rather give me a case scenario? Yes. Anyone? Where you have felt favoritism and maybe for if it's tribal, if it's relationship, if it's uh, professional favoritism, something like that. Anyone with a case scenario would like to share? All right. If not, then we are looking at um, extending this further. So there are case scenarios that we have, different companies that we have seen this play out. I know there are companies that we all know. So what happens when ethics fail, and especially in our corporate space? These are small failures, but with big consequences. And as we said in the beginning, ethical lapses, they rarely start as big. They are small nuances that happen in our daily interactions with them, small compromises here and there, it goes ignored, the red flags, the silent bystanders, yeah. If they all go unchecked, it erodes the culture. And if the culture is eroded, that's what you will find what Winnie was speaking about, cultural, organizational culture. Yeah. All right. Case number one, we were looking at Imperial. Any of all of us remember what Imperial Bank was, or know what Imperial Bank is? If you heard of the case of Imperial Bank and Chase Bank, thumbs up. Yes. Oh, good, Robert. Yes, Andrew. I can see. What do you think happened? Maybe you can uh, engage me on this. What do you think happened? Anyone would care to say something about the Imperial and Chase Bank issue before I bring up my notes? Yeah, we know what happened. It was a big thing. It was a big thing. Yeah, and it started in 2026. The case lagged on until they were making, I think, some final judgment in 2024. There, around there. Yeah. So in this case, what went wrong with Chase, rather Chase Bank and Imperial Bank? Both Imperial Bank and Chase Bank, they collapsed due to systemic fraud. Now, there was a complete system and internal oversight. You could see what we are talking about, people reporting numbers that were not there. You are reporting loans that are really not there, yeah? And people are swindling the company. And then internally, people knew, nuances, things like this do not happen, in Ethiopia, right? There are some 411s you hear in there, but it goes unchecked, right? And you find that 266 million was recorded in losses. Yeah, depositors cash, employees lost their job. It lost its viability in the Kenyan market. And this was just because of governance issues, structural issues, things that were information not being shared correctly. People don't know, not being accountable to whatever it is they were doing. Yeah. And what was the repercussion for this? What is the lesson? They did not, they lacked accountability. As Winnie said, it has to start from the top. When leaders do not show accountability, probably juniors will not do that. When leaders do not show accountability, leaders will not be able to do that. Juniors will not be able to do that. Okay. So we learned that there was no integrity, there was transparency, there was no accountability. Yeah. Ethical issues here, they began small at this point, but later on, the bank was put into receivership. People lost their jobs, just because it started as small cover-up. Maybe someone awarding themselves loans, but not paying back. But in the books, they record as they have already paid. Yeah. But when they are giving the board reports, they are cleaning the books and the report from the board side, or from the board's view, it looks clean, it looks awesome, right? Then we are looking at also the case scenario here will be Del Monte. Most of us remember in 2024 what happened. There were some people who died there, yeah, and then there was some audit that was done, and then through that audit, what happened was you find that Del Monte was suspended, yeah, from major markets, international markets, from major supermarkets, from selling their produce, just because the audit found out that they had, obstructed, or rather they had obscured employee engagement. It revealed a very, very, very serious, workplace safety issues or violations. Yeah, we've heard of people there working under hazardous, conditions. We heard of people there not, having some protective equipment, and we've heard that, they are employing, they are paying people poorly, something like that. Yeah. So those things, when you have an unlawful labor practice and it goes unnoticed, something is bound up. In the long run, if somebody doesn't speak up, it will happen the way. Now the remote is trying to come up because they have put some measures in place that are, again, counterchecking what the audit said. They're trying to come up. But you see, their market, international market was suffered. At the end of the day, what happened? People lost jobs. Revenues was lost by the company, and by extension, if you lost your job, that means your dependent are not also stable in this case. So employee safety now should be key issue for any organization. That was what was learned there. Yeah? Ignoring worker welfare risks contract, risks reputation, and even legal liabilities. Yeah, that is the key lesson, because again, there was some employees who were terminated, but then they went to court. Yeah, ethical workplace protect people first, business second. Yeah, do not really. There are people who care about revenue, but they don't care about welfare. That's why you find a lot of people do not have good working conditions. Yeah, so a case for them should be a learning curve for any organization, for us as leaders in our own organization. What are the key things that we are learning from this case study? It's rather good we prevent them now. When you see, so as I said, those nuances that happen on a daily, when they happen, it's good that we speak about them now than later. And there's a good scenario here that this was a case by someone called Dominic Aoko versus SRM. They were working for G4S, and there was the ethical failure in this case. They went to court to report about sexual harassment. And it's things that happen in offices. Most of the time we let them slide, or no one come. Just these people are just, they are jokes, it's jokes, or rather it is not as serious, but some people take it seriously, right? When it affects them, they take it seriously. So in this case, if this employee filed a harassment complaint, and throughout the case, he was able to give evidence of these things being happening. Apparently, it was being done, and there was a scandal, mostly for G4S. Female employees being harassed, male employees being harassed, and those things like those. So this case took precedence because it was a case that was reported, but it went through the process, and this employee was awarded 2.9 million just because of the damages that they went through. Yeah, the organization in this case was not able to prove otherwise. So we can see these things that they may report, and as I said, it may come today as a warning, but tomorrow it will not be as a warning. Somebody will take it seriously and go to court. And then what happens? You as a company, you as a leader, you will be liable. Yeah? Then you will be told maybe to give fines and things like those, right? All right. Now, the bad side aside, okay, these are the key lessons that we learn. Respect again, accountability, then legal risk. When you are looking at all those things that you learn from these case scenarios, it is something that you reflect on and think about them. What are you doing in your company? What are you doing in your organization? What are you doing as a person? Yeah, to improve on this ethics, so that you are not, by extension, falling into prey for things like this. But on the flip side, there are companies that are doing good in ethics. They are caring for all these pillars that we've talked about. Yeah, not all is lost. Yeah. So company number one, all of us know about Safaricom. Safaricom in Kenya, a survey that was done in 2023, it found out that Safaricom is leading in workplace ethics. What are they doing right? They are transparent, their transparency, their system in fraud monitoring, their employee engagement, or rather the employee welfare consideration, and all those things. So we can take a learning curve from this Safaricom. What are the outcome? What are the key lessons we find here? We find that we have reduced internal fraud cases or other incidents. Many of you will agree with me. How many of you have called any Safaricom line or customer care and they spoke? Is there a case that they spoke or rather rudely to you? Thumbs up if you have ever spoken to a customer care for Safaricom customer and they have not spoken like the way you perceive good. Anyone? Because Safaricom in this case, they have trained the employee. Even if the customer will speak rude to you, do not reciprocate by speaking rude to them. And one of the key metrics for their performance check is do not at any point hang out or hang up on a customer. Let them be the one hanging up, but not you. So if they find you maybe a customer spoke bad or rudely to you, and then you hang up the phone, that is a clear termination. Yeah. So there is higher employee retention, there is stronger regulatory compliance within Safaricom, there is sustained market leadership. You can all agree. Just recently, I came across some information that the CEO of Safaricom gets around 34 million a month in terms of salary. Yeah. So again, it is a company that pays. It is known to be remunerating well their employees and so forth and things like that. So they consider work ethics to be an important aspect. Another one would be CKL. This is an organization that deals with animal feeds and things like those. Yeah. Again, they are considered as their code of ethics. They consider employee welfare. They consider accountability as key. They consider transparency as key in their organization and things like those. So again, here we see culture and retention practices in this case. It's very hard. Yeah. Commitment and respect is key to this organization. That's what we are trying to also learn here. Are you committed to doing the right thing, not just what you have the right to do? Are you committed to being transparent? Are you committed to being accountable and things like those? Yeah. So how, again, Standard Chartered Bank, they have the frameworks for anti-corruption frameworks. Yeah. It has built an institutional stability through robust anti-corruption measures, ethical governance frameworks by embedding compliance culture in every level of their systems. It fosters trust among, of course, the employees, the clients, and even the regulators. The integrity aspect of their organization is key, or rather, it is very important to them. Integrity is key. In this case, we are not just looking at the revenue of the company, but we are looking about the whole scenario, rather the whole organization in terms of how they treat employees, how they treat their customers, how they are in the market, and things like those. So their practical frameworks in this case include transparency, as we just mentioned. They have very transparent channel. If you have feedback, you are very open to give feedback, not worrying about the repercussion or rather retaliation in this case. Yeah. All this, we see that they have strengthened their market stature and also their retention in terms of employees. So, looking at practical steps, what are the practical steps that we need to check or rather to do in order to improve work ethics? As Winnie had rightly put it, leadership modeling on a daily as leaders, it is very key. Yeah, leaders must visibly, and I say visibly because it must be seen to be done. And Samanga justice not just done, but it must be seen to be done. Yeah? In this case, is justice being seen to be done? Yeah, it must be visible. All right. Number two, there has to be clear communication of values. Now, we have organizational values, we have personal values. Of course, organizational value will again translate to how culture is, and culture now will get translated how how the workplace ethics are looking like, and how people interact in their own, team, in their own environment, right? So ensure all employees understand these organizational ethical values or ethical standards and expectations, right? When you go into an organization or when you go into or interact with a person, what do you see there? Because that will dictate how you will carry them up. If you respect them, if you will be transparent to them, if you will be accountable in whatever things that you are trying to do, right? Three would be open dialogue. This one is key. Do I feel as an employee, I can come and give you my suggestion in terms of how I see things being done, and you are going to act on it? If not, then what are the repercussions? In this case, I would like to think that most organizations, they are receptive to open dialogue. Yeah. Now, I would like to ask a question at this point, probably. In our own organization, do we feel that it is an organization where we have open dialogue space where we can go report or give suggestions? Like, thumbs up, probably. Or someone can unmute the mic and then tell me if the organization they are in, it's open to dialogue. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Are we still together? We are just finishing. Thank you, Mary. So thumbs up if your organization are open to dialogue. Yeah, Robert, thank you. All right. That's a good step to start, because that's, at least from there, you'll be able to give your suggestions. Thank you, Bio. You'll be able to give you the suggestion and know that at least, even if it will not be implemented, but at least they will listen to you, right? So create a safe space where people will come to you if you are a leader, where people will come to you, give you feedback. And this, I mean, an honest feedback. If it's something you are doing wrong, they will be able to tell you. If something that you are doing right, they will also be able to tell you and give suggestions on how you can again improve. Number four, which is also key, recognizing ethical behavior. If somebody does right, recognize them. If somebody does wrong, also tell them out so that they can improve. Because some things we do them by not knowing we are doing them. You know? It can be unconsciously done, right? So acknowledge and reward employees that show constant and they demonstrate consistent good work ethics. Then we show continuous training. And I believe this is one of the ways that we are dealing with work ethics. By you attending this training, it means that you are taking it as important. You want to know how again can I improve in trying to conduct, or rather do some be an accountable person, be respectful, be a person who is can be held at a high esteem. Yeah. So, any question at this point as we finish? So, at this point, I'd like to finish by saying this. These are the five things that are, or rather the things that are needed for us to take in, or rather the action points when you are dealing with ethics or other habits. Yeah. If you find yourself, whatever you are doing, you have doubt if it's right or wrong, of course. Yeah. Then name that thing that you're trying to. If you're naming it outright, that means that you are acknowledging the situation, or you are acknowledging the feeling um, if it will be right. Because if it feels wrong, it definitely will be wrong. Yeah. So saying it out loud is the first step for resolving that. Then there is something I like to call the front end question. What is the front end question in this case? Ask yourself, would I be comfortable with the decision I'm trying to make if this decision uh, uh, affected someone or came out bad, or it was a lot of people came to know of it. Yeah, would I be comfortable with it? Now, if not, reconsider that decision. Then number two would be give bad news early. Do not wait for them to become mountains. If you have an update to give at work and you feel that this update, maybe it's needed within a day or two, but you have a bottleneck, you feel that there is a risk somewhere, there is a chance of failure somewhere, say it out loud, or rather, say it before it becomes big. Because waiting on the deadline day and then saying it might be a bit too late to resolve whatever it is that you are trying to do. Because you are trying to be transparent in this case. Speak out early. So look, number three will be look for those things when they are small, those things that you are noticing that are unethical. Speak about them or say about them. Yeah. Speak, give information when it's still not, uh, when it is not big. Yeah. And then at every day, reflect on each day that whatever it is that you are doing. Yeah. As a professional, will it be a professional that you want to be? Would whatever you are doing, would you be comfortable with it? Would you call it a professional thing you are doing? If not, again, pause. Because again, set your ethical intentions before every day so that you know these are intentional. It is something that it is intentional. As I say, it's a reflex, and reflexes comes as we practice. Yeah. So if it's not comfortable to you, it may be not comfortable to the other person. Think about it before you do it. So at that point, I'd like to ask, maybe open the floor if there's any question, then we can uh, answer that the best way we can. But at that point, I'd like to thank you all for your participation. I hope this has been informative and we've learned a thing or two. We look forward to seeing you again next. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'd like to return the meeting to Christian if there are no any questions. Yes, Robert. Yeah. What was the Robert? Is it on the chat? Let me check on the chat. Yeah, yes, I can. Oh, oh, Robert, you have your hand up. You can ask a question or maybe a comment if you have. Okay. So I trust that we have learned a thing or two. So yeah, back to you, Christian. Monaisha, you can ask if it's a question or a comment. Or is by mistake again? Yeah? Monaisha, we can't, if you're speaking, you are on mute. If you are speaking, you are on mute.
Yes, afternoon. Just a question. Maybe
Yes, yes.
you had an issue maybe in the field, and then you escalated the issue, but now it has reached a point that it keeps on recurring without any resolution to it. Then unafika mahali unasema wacha nijifunze kunyamaza, and then you leave it at that, whether it is going to be resolved or not. Does it fall under uh, ethics still, or where does that fall?
Thank you for that question. It is a very a lot. Even as I think I gave an example where I had my workplace, where my previous workplace, where we had given a warning as an IT department in terms of backups not happening. So I agree with you. It is an ethical issue because in this case, it's a warning that you are trying to give. But the management in this case are not taking it either seriously or they are not considering it, right? So in this case, what I would suggest, because here we have gone through the 5 pillars, yeah. In this case, you are being transparent, yeah, to tell them that these are the issues that you are facing, and these are the suggestions that you are giving, and these are or rather the outcome that you expect. But this outcome that you're expecting from your leaders is not forthcoming. So in this case, I would suggest, because it's an organization where if are you in a position to make a decision towards them? If yes, then go ahead and make it. Because again, as I say, the organization is us. Whether we fail or succeed, it is us. So if you are in a position of making a decision of that which you are suggesting, I would suggest you make it, because if you are being accountable in this case, you are owning the process. So whether it will turn out good or whether it will turn out bad, you are remaining accountable. But if you are not in a position to make a decision, I would say you are remaining transparent in this case. Transparency, and as you've mentioned, that you are sharing information that could later be, or rather could help your organization make a decision. If you have shared that information, well and good, yeah, give and make it known that make it known that you have given that suggestion, or that you have shared the information, and you are articulating that information in terms of what is the impact if whatever you're suggesting is not followed. And I would think that if your leaders are good, or rather they are, I don't want to use the word learned enough. But if they are listening, if they are good listeners, they would listen. Because no one, as a boss or as a leader, you don't want the organization to fail because I failed to listen to someone, right? So if they are good listeners, they will listen, because it now tells you that you have given the information, if you have given the reasons why you have given the information, if you have given also the impact of the information that you have shared. Now it's up to them to make a decision, because you are not in a position to make that decision. But I will not advocate for keeping quiet, say, kujifunza kunyamaza. Yeah. But do your due diligence, yeah, to inform them. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered you. Because again, as I said, when things go wrong, they will come back to you. Why didn't you say? So in this case, make sure that it's on record. You've told them that this is the issue I'm trying to suggest or trying to bring out. This is the feedback, and this is the impact that I'm foreseeing. Yeah. So in the event that it happens, let it be known that I told you, right? That would be my answer. I hope I've answered you. Yes. All right. Any other? there is none, again, back to you, Christian.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes. Ask. Is it Robert? Robert Opio?
Yes. Yes. You find that in most of the organization, the buck stops with the leader or the supervisor in that case.
Yeah.
And most of the time, maybe the junior or the subordinate just to do something which is outrightly wrong, knowing that they want to be held accountable. Maybe it starts with the supervisor. And by the time the appointing authority knows where the problem started, maybe the supervisor shall have suffered irreparable harm. How do you go about that?
Again, because we are living in a society, truth be told, that these ethics that we have told, or rather we've learned about, they are not really magnified in our society, if I use that word. But in this case, I would rather, as I just spoke about being transparent, was the information you're trying to give, or rather was the task that you're trying to give, was it benefiting them, or was the information you were trying to give, was it truthful? Because most of the time, truth be told, most people in the organization, they suffer for things that it is wrongfully bestowed upon them, or they suffer for things that are not really meant for them. Yeah. But in this case, maybe I would seek legal redress in that case, because it comes a time where you find that you are not in a position to make a decision, but there's something has to be done. You have given information, but nothing is being done. But in the point it reaches that whatever it is that you are trying, it has come back in the wrong way. You become the fall person. Yeah, I know sometimes they say things on the ground are very different, but in this case, maybe seeking some legal redress would be an option. Maybe advice. I don't know if I've answered you. Yeah, appeal. Appeal. Okay, back to you, Christine. Thank you all and bye-bye.